Linda Hogan is joining us as our keynote reader of the 2014 to 15 season. She's many things to many people. I know a lot of you know her work. She's a feminist, a member of the Chickasaw Nation, a teacher. As an environmentalist, she has spoken in front of international conferences, including before United Nations Forum, and she's also an accomplished fiction writer. She's received fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation and National Endowment for the Arts, and today she's joining us as a poet. Her poetry is, I'm a historian, so I have a soft spot for it. It's steeped in history and belies background in oral tradition, but it uses history and politics in a lyrical way and makes them almost mythic and beautiful to learn. She's received awards for some of her poetry books, an American Book Award for Seeing Through the Sun, and a National Book Critics Award finalist for her book, The Book of Medicines. And then her most recent book, Dark Sweet, was just released this past year by Coffee House Press. So, without further ado, welcome Linda Hogan. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being here. Can you hear me okay? Yes and no? Okay, there we go. After you said history, I thought, well, I should change my idea of what I'm reading tonight. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm grateful for the people who's our original people here and that were on this earth, their land. This is a kind of a big book. I'm sort of surprised that I write so much, because I already have another book ready almost, and I was thinking maybe it's time to just retire, but I can't, because you know how it is with writing poetry. You just can't stop. You love it so much. And I'm going to start reading, and history is one of my favorite topics too. I've been doing a lot of research on our tribe that sort of makes the history that's written and published look like narrative fiction that was created in the minds of all kinds of people, including archaeologists with their ceramics and the stories they created, not knowing what the mythology was behind those objects. And I wish I could be here for your reading with high school students tomorrow night. I think that's going to be great. And poetry reading every night for a month sounds like fun. I don't know. I get the poem a day in the internet, and that's my special moment. Then it makes me want to write some more poems. I'm going to read Bear Fat first. When the old man rubbed my back with bear fat, I dreamed the winter horses had eaten the bark off trees and the tails of one another. I slept a hole into my own hunger that once ate lard and bread from a skillet seasoned with salt. Fat was the light I saw through the eyes of the bear, 3 bony dogs leading men into the grass-lined cave of sleep to kill hunger as it slept itself thin. They grew fat with the swallowed grease. They ate even the wood ashes after they died, and when they slept, after the bear died, and when they slept, did they remember back to when they were wolves. I am afraid of the future, as if I am the bear turned in the stomach of needy men, or the wolf become a dog that will turn against itself, remembering what wildness was, before the crack of a gun, before the men tried to kill it or tame it or tried to make it love them. I just realized that there was a typo in here, and I don't know what the word was that I needed to add because it's been so long. So, the next one, I actually live in a wildlife corridor, so I do encounter mountain lions, and we do have bears that pass through, and the pack of wolves came up from Yellowstone one year, and I try not to tell stories, but I can't help it. And my dog was barking, and I was typing, and I didn't pay too much attention to the barking dog, but then I went out to feed my horses, and there was blood everywhere. And so I thought something happened to one of my horses, so I checked them out, every part of them, and they weren't bleeding anywhere. So then I looked around and I followed the blood trail down the hill and across this creek and then up this other hill. And it turned out that it was a deer that had been killed, and it was wolves and not a mountain lion because they ate the entire thing, and their teeth marks were pink in the bone, and the head was gone, which is a wolf thing to do. So it was, I thought, I had just seen them before that, the ghostly presence of 5 wolves just going by on the hillside, and they're just like some kind of unusual creature just creeping by. And I didn't say anything to anyone because I knew that they'd be all out there with their guns and shoot them. And so anyway, I found the deer that they ate, because they eat 25 pounds all at once. Sometimes they can't even move when they eat so much. They just stay in one place. But then I came home from work one day, and they had attacked an elk, and it was cut at the neck, and the elk just stayed at the horse shed until it healed because it wasn't going to venture out anywhere. It's like, it's dangerous in these here hills. So this is a mountain lion, but it's about other things besides mountain lions, and they are very beautiful creatures, very, very beautiful. She lives on the dangerous side of the clearing, in the yellow-eyed shadow of a darker fear. We have seen each other inside mortal dusk, and what passed between us was the road ghosts travel when they cannot rest in the land of the terrible other. Red spirits of hunters walked between us from the place where blood goes back to its wound, before fire, before weapons. Nothing was hidden in our eyes. I was the wild thing she had learned to fear. Her power lived in the dream of my living. It was the same way I have looked so many times at others in clear light before lowering my eyes and turning away from what lives inside those who have found 2 worlds cannot live inside a single vision. So that was from the book of medicines. And I'm going to go to Rounding the Human Corners and read the first poem, Eucalyptus. I was at an Indigenous knowledge gathering, and I couldn't go to the ceremony outside because I'd been in an accident. So I was inside, but there was a deck. Eucalyptus. It is the first red light of morning, and the others are praying outside with old songs, sage and tobacco, while I have been dreaming from the deep, the ancient, taking in the red light rising between the eucalyptus trees and their fragrance. They dropped 3 seeds in the shadows, 3 deep shrines, worlds becoming. I can hold them. And the naked bark, its spare intimacy that peels back and reveals its other layers, deeper, earlier, without effort, that beautiful undoing, the smooth newness. Some of the religious say the 5 senses are thieves. So let's say I am the stolen, because my senses are all awake, and like the tree, I can lose myself, layer after layer, all the way down to infinity, and that's when the world has eyes and sees. The whole world loves the unlayered human. One of my students sent me a text telling me what poems she thought I ought to read. She said, these are my favorites. And I thought, well, they're not the ones I'm going to read. I'm so sorry, but I'm reading some of them. Children of light. This is kind of like a bicycle water thing, you know. It's a great idea, though. Children of light. See her, I do. Kneel to her, I do. What sweetness she is. Coax her as if you can make her believe she will live in a shining meadow or a cave of crystal, as if the first step is toward an opening of sun or star-filled night. She will open from your first self and lighten her being with the brightness of step. And I see her like I am myself. Love her, hold her, a hand at the back of the neck, and the girl child in my center, born to a world not in prison, not killed as an infant, the best of fortune, not in a flooding delta, a war, not with a machete to the neck, lucky enough, not with her own child killed before her. She is the carried gift, how very tender, like the turning silver of the fish in the pond at night, beautiful, exhausted, to come passing into the circle of the world. She is the grain-filled, grape-filled, milk-filled light. She has no fur, no thick hide. No wonder we are warriors. Come, child, even if you will never understand, even if you will be angry with your own kind. I went to an herbal gathering about herbs, and it was on the island where Chief South or Seattle was born and from, in Washington, and this poem came from there. We found a little piece of what looked like plastic. My friend and I were walking on the beach, and I noticed it wasn't plastic and that it was a jellyfish, and we thought, she said, oh, it's dead, and I picked it up with a stick and put it back in the water, and it wasn't. So this came from that experience. Dimensions. How is it decided who among us has hands, gill slits, who will gather up a small thing, waiting too far from the ocean to be alive or return with the kelp and its bulbs of gold and the creature we see almost through, see in the light of morning among the many baleful closures of the ocean? How is it decided who will gather up the small thing seeming lifeless and return it to water as its grave, only to watch it slowly open, jellyfish like a pulse, a robe of orange splendor in the finery of ocean creation? I see the wave with the curve of light, the force of it, one after another, not wondering if it is the ocean. I see the infinite pastures of water, some with the newly born, some with the just as newly gone. Here is the place of sliding worlds, at the birthplace of Chief Seattle, whose people, he said, would always be among those with bodies. And how is it decided who has dominion of the flesh to pass through unseen or on its way to being spirit, forgetting the brief distances in time? I don't know who lives here, if they are happy in that slide of cells that created and birthed them, or who is it that decided who has hands, who can speak, who is light? This same friend and I did a book on gray whales, and we spent years traveling from Baja, from the birthing lagoons and up to the Bering Sea area where they go. And then years later, and my brother took a photograph in the birthing lagoons and went along with us one year. And the photograph made a big difference because Mitsubishi was going to build a salt factory there, which would have killed the eelgrass. And they said that the eelgrass wasn't important to the whales. But he took a picture of the baby whales eating eelgrass, not realizing what he was doing, and it stopped the factory, which was, yeah. Which was great because we ended up one time when we were there, the plane we were in caught on fire. It's a long story. I won't go into it, but then the feds came, the federales, and we had to give them all our money or they said they'd plant drugs and everything else we had. So, so we ended up in one of the lagoons where they did have a salt factory, and it was a totally destroyed place, and the town was full of people who worked there, and it was a totally destroyed town, and the drunks were everywhere, and it was really, and it was called Negro Lagoon, and it was very, you could feel the damage in your body. So years later, the Quileute Nation had a ceremony, and they had sworn they would never, ever whale, and this is when we were there, we were going to be taken care of. And the paddling nations all came to the ceremony, and it was very lovely, very beautiful. It's called We Will Feed You. In the morning, I hear the chants of the paddlers, the canoe nations with their sea journey coming in with the tide over a forest of seaweed. There is a story in the large single tree that carries them on water. The story is long. They sing it and tell tell it their names. First I saw them as if they rose from the sea, one after the other, same as the waves, and I ran to meet them, the paddlers of the black canoes, as if they were my tribe when we came to this land from the other side of America, then meeting DeSoto and becoming slaves. At night, the dancers, the heart of the singers, come into my heart, the blankets with salmon and buttons, as if closing and opening the history on their backs. All were there, eagle, whale, frog, raven, the world. There are times I long for the beginning, that canoe of my own people, seeing the flowers so beautiful and the birds of all colors as we journey, myself a cell of someone's body, seeing it through their eyes, but this time I only wish to be on this coast, sleeping with the old ones in a village newly revealed, up from the ocean, this edge of being there, the cedar of the canoes, of the beautiful and light in the morning, the man saying, "We will feed you, we will care for you, you may step upon this land." He would give every person, every group of paddlers that came, they would ask for permission to come, and he'd give them their permission to be there. Because there's so many writers here, I'd like to leave some time for questions too at the end. There are over 100 pages of new poems in the back. And so I'm going to read some of the newer ones. Spirit Bone. Make a song from these bones. Nothing like it has been heard. The song beautiful as the birds outside, the bees in the balm tree petals, and the flowers, mine, which may one day fall from the pages of a book opened by a stranger. Or if you could find your way in the bones of places traveled. I have told you the story of the mountainside. My life was there. Walk your bones along with mine in any way you can. Inner nerve, marrow, calcium, the archaeology of it, so ancient, never crossing the large river, and think, what is the name of any life? With only 5 fingers, the hands that grew grapes, how much better the wine. It comes close to you, this bottle, and if that makes you sing, drink it well, dear, dear human. A life so hard, and like the bone, it lasts so long. Before you know it, you are walking on a dark road, going home with nothing but a story, and with time to tell it at last, and maybe someone who will listen remembers the name of this life, the story of the body, the walk. Wouldn't you love that one? Who knows where poems come from? That's when I fell in love with poetry, was when I discovered that things happen that you don't expect and you don't really know what you're doing, and then magic sometimes creeps in, and it's just so beautiful of an experience that that's all you want to do for the rest of your life, and never gets old. It never gets old. You never get bored. You never get tired of it. The eyes of the animals. Looking into the eyes of the elephant, I am looking also into the eyes of the great land tortoise with its life more than 100 years. And I see the sand, the salt water from those eyes, the mouth, claws, flippers, hoof, trunk, all on the way to any water across a changed world where nothing is familiar. And looking into the eyes of the mountain gorilla infant, holding green bamboo with her black hands and fingernails so perfect, the eyes look back at me, so unwillingly gentle and alive, so unwilling to say, take me out of the fur, as the turtle cannot say, take from me the great shell, or the elephant its tusk or hoof. It would say, I am light, kind, I am the same as you. I see the red eyes of the tree frog, climbing with yellow webbed feet, hanging on, calling out for rain. Dear life, let's you and I talk about the orangutan surrounded by shining fur, all amber jewel, golden eyes, copper arms stretched thin, open and reaching, holding the emerald plant and the shining light of morning. A diamond cutter could not make anything so great, so needed, so needy, so desired and desirable as this red ruby of a child. So, dear life, protect this world. Look into the eye of the whale. There are no words a man can speak so great as theirs. And then there are the eyes of the wolf. The god was named for them. And when you see any of these, you know all they want is to live, to survive, to care for their playful young, just as we do, knowing God is not who or what or anything, but all this life. Even the circle of fern is unfolding, and the eyes of the universe look back at you with the true knowledge of what you are, saying, human, woman, man, child, this world, even yourself, you must learn to love. I was fortunate enough to go to Nebraska, where the sandhill cranes go, from all over the world to Kearney, Nebraska. They come from Siberia and Latin America, and they all come together, and they talk a lot. They're very noisy, and you can't sleep when you're there because they're so noisy. But then after a while, I got used to the noise so I could sleep through it. And then one night, the lightning and thunder came, and they all shut up. And then I was like wide awake, I went so silent. But there were just thousands. It was like the whole earth was just one bunch of cranes. And so they stay in this one little braided stream in Nebraska in the nighttime and look for mates and and they bring their families or whatever, and then in the daytime they go to all the fields where there are seeds and corn and pieces of things that they can eat. So no GMO products there, I hope, ever. I'm a GMO fanatic, I'm sorry, but I'm so against them that I just spend a lot of time every day signing petitions, and I don't eat anything that I know is genetically modified, and I nag everybody else. I can be a terrible nag about GMO products. First language, Sandhill Cranes. Here the water is different every morning, every moment. It is a place with everything changing, even the sounds. Some call these the changers of language, the tellers of stories, these birds. I say they were here on the first day of sky creation, when one of our many gods said or thought, "Let there be infinite sky and creatures with wings, the red of setting sun over a golden eye, as if to disguise what is seen." And now at night, all of the birds settle low in the dark water, as if believing they are hidden away for the night. They will be tall ones, standing now and then, noisy and singing, talking, looking for a mate. All night, new ones arrive from the four directions, the horizon, as if coming up from the ground and not down from the sky. These, the long neck of this planet, crying out, they are the ancient beginnings. Here they come. Listen, coming near to us, gathering, standing close to us, speaking out to us, all together, this island of Crane, all one mind, all together speaking our first language. I'm going to read two more. I am a member of the Turtle Clan, which is so old, the oldest clan in the tribe, that so old that some people have just dropped it from the materials in the books, but that's my grandmother and that's our family. And so I must have turtle. I had to get a bumper sticker on my truck that said I brake for turtles, and on my car, so because in Oklahoma when they migrate, people will just run over them, and I would like slam on my brakes and go get them and carry them to, if they were going to asphalt, I'd take them to a better place, but if they were going to water, I'd take them to water. And so even in the ocean, they just like me. And so I've been in the ocean just swimming and not expecting it, but seeing seeing turtles. And the last time I went with Peggy Shoemaker, or Schumacher, the poet, who is a friend of mine and has a house in Hawaii, and we went into the water, and I thought I ran into a boat, and it was this giant turtle, and then it went under me. And so I could put my hand on it, even though you're probably not supposed to. And its back wasn't like I thought it would be at all. It was just like very rough and, mossy or something. And so, but all these tourists came because all the turtles came. So we had to leave because they were all bumping into each other and us, and, But everybody wanted to see the turtles because they are just so amazing and beautiful, and also so many of them are so endangered. I worked for the Nature Conservancy and the Yucatan, and the turtles started coming in early, but the difficulty there was that the people were starving to death because the hemp industry for rope and other things that they were growing had shut down, so there were a lot of unemployed people that wanted not only the eggs, but the turtles. And it was hard because the Nature Conservancy was trying to protect the turtles, but you also had the people that were there that were starving. And so, it's like a two-edged sword or something, that in this world where we have hard decisions, things to do, that we should take care of the people also, not just the turtles and the animals. I have to give you introductions to everything. I'm so sorry I do that. I have a friend that just reads poetry and lets everyone figure it out for themselves if they can. But Old Mother, this is called Turtle Watchers. Old Mother at water's edge used to bow down to them, the turtles coming in from the sea, their many eggs, their eyes streaming water like tears. And I'd see it all, Old Mother, as if in prayer. The turtles called back to where they were born, the hungry watchers standing at the edges of trees, hoping for food when darkness gathers. Years later, swimming in murky waters, a sea turtle swam beside me, both of us watching as if clasped together in the lineage of the same world, the sweep of the same current, even rising for a breath of air at the same time, still watching. My ancestors called them the keepers of doors, and the shore a realm to other worlds, both ways. And water moves the deep shift of life back to birth and before, as if there is a path where beings truly meet, as if I am rounding the human corners. Skin boats. North, watching men stretch the hide, the curve around wood, the willow shoots for ribs, as if creating a body, skin over wood that might start to breathe, that will pass through broken waters, away from searching ravens, just like the ancestors are there inside the curve of skin, moving you, saying, may you know peace, may you live in a world without weapons, and remember as you pass through and across, wearing the skin of the animal, sitting with the tree, being the tree that life flowed through, its bare roots for now, not holding tight to earth. Remember the shore that surrounds this continent, the history of life as it is spoken, along the edges, thresholds of all enchanted worlds. The first ones say this, pretending to be the breaking waves, and then you can set out, crying out in all your full vigor. Thank you. Wow, what a bunch of poetry lovers. This is great. I'm willing to answer questions. I'm sure that a lot of you are poets and writers, and answer questions about the poems or your work or whatever you would like to ask.
I just want to comment that I really enjoy the stories that you said along with the poems. That was really helpful and good. So don't apologize for the storytelling along with your poems. It was great.
Oh, okay, thank you. My friend said that she thinks it takes away the power of the poem, but I think it kind of explains what the poems are, especially to mixed audiences, where you have indigenous people and non-indigenous people, and you're talking about things that are experiences that others might not have had or might not have. So I like to do it, but I can tell stories forever. I can just talk to you about how tree roots communicate and, micro rhizomes and, it's just, I love everything that happens on our earth and inside of it, and it's just such an amazing place. We have to take good care. Yes, hi.
What do you think your poems do that other forms of writing might not be as successful at?
You mean like fiction or?
Whatever.
I do think poems are a form of enchantment, and that word is the same as canto, like song. And so to me, they are a kind of a special song or a prayer or something that is different than a novel, which is, you have to think about plot and character development, and a poem is like this beautifully woven blanket or something that all fits together somehow and resonates. I like the resonance of the poetry. But fiction is great to write too, and essays are. I've been reading Rebecca Solnit, and I hadn't heard of her until I heard her interview on the radio recently, and so I bought a couple of her books, and I started one on the airplane, and I just fell in love with the writing and the thinking. So essays can do some pretty amazing things if they're done well. My nonfiction students all think they have to write about their own life. That they're writing nonfiction, it has to be a memoir. But, I tell them it doesn't have to just be about you, You can start with you and then go somewhere else. Tell about your world, What do you think? I mean, you're a publisher. What do you think poems do?
Well, like you, I think of the close association with song and prayer and the way that the language is so condensed and focused that it has a differentiation that way from other forms of writing. So I think there's more intensity when there's a kind of compression of the language and a sharper focus, perhaps.
That's what I meant to say, just like that. Yes, I see a hand.
I have kind of a process question. A couple of us here were at a workshop earlier today, and the writer there had the same idea that you had when you were mentioning about the magic that happens or the discovery that is made as you're writing the poem. The writer surprised at that discovery. So I'm curious about whether or not you just kind of free flow and then find the poem within, or how you approach that, and when do you recognize the magic has happened?
It's almost like a heartbeat. Like you recognize the strongest line, or you recognize where you'll write yourself into the poem, and you just start writing when you're writing, and then suddenly it takes on a heartbeat or a pulse, and you just know that that's the place where it starts. Or same thing with finishing, intuitive, there's an intuition that you get where you know to finish. But with most writers who haven't been writing a long time, a lot of the thing I always tell people is to look at the beginning and look at the end and see if you can cut those two places, because somehow I think English composition classes ruin our poetry lives, because they tell you to say what you're going to say, then say it, and then say what you said. And so, but you just want that central part where you just say it. But sometimes it takes years to find the magic in a poem, to get it right. And sometimes you never do, like you have to be patient or give up at times. Or I had a poem that I kept trying to write over and over ever since starting to write. And it eventually became a part of my book of essays. And so, it just was not meant to be a poem. But for the most part, anything can be a poem. You can just take a group of words, put them together, and then see what happens, because they'll set off something in you that sparkles.
I'm interested in the magic that occurred with the poem, The Eyes of the Animals. I found that really powerful, and the images, the progression of images, the elephant and the whale and the wolf and the unfurling of the fern. Could you talk a little bit about finding that poem or bringing it together?
I hate to tell you this, but I was looking at a calendar of animals.
I saved those too.
I got it in the mail from, I don't know, maybe National Wildlife Foundation or something. And I just decided to write about each one of the animals. And so that's where I started. And then I added a few of my own and left out some. But that's what I said. Anything can happen that can make a poem. I mean, it can be something as mundane as a calendar, that can do it. And so, I got the description, and then I started thinking about just, the elephant was so beautiful. This woman, Katie Gleisner, has just done a CD and a DVD also of poetry, and she has some of my poems in it. And it's really so beautiful because she has these pictures, she has this video that goes with it of the people. I don't know if you've ever seen this video, but it's people with elephants, and there's a child swimming with an elephant and a woman, the child and his mother, and they're with the elephants, and the elephant is so kind. It's like got its trunk wrapped around the child, and you can see the elephant eye, and it's kind of in sepia, and it's so beautiful. And I mean, it's just like it's visually poetic. It's a visual poem. But, to think that the elephants are this humane and this amazing, and they're so intelligent, and they can communicate so far. And then thinking that they're so endangered because they don't have enough water, and the people want their tusks, and, it's really hard for me to think about all these things. So, I just thought, okay, I'm going to have a discussion with the life force of the world about all this. So I picked the animals that I knew were in trouble in the world. I actually, when I was young, I worked at a zoo, and I don't say that I think zoos are a great idea, but the love for animals, to be around them all the time. It's like really a real increase to realize how intelligent and how much they really know and what they think of humans. You know, they don't really like humans a lot, but if they get to know you, they're okay. Yes.
I'm wondering when you discovered poetry, whether reading it or your own writing of it.
Well, I was working as a teacher's aide in my late 20s, and I worked with physically handicapped kids, like kids with muscular dystrophy and cerebral palsy, and I loved my job a lot, and it was very physical and very, you know, like I'd work in the summer and the kids would love to get in the swimming pool and have full motion, different motion, and so it was just a joy. But I read 2 poems that I discovered that contemporary poetry for the first time in my life. I had never known that there was such a thing. And one was by Kenneth Rexroth, and it was about a cow, and I thought, well, I know about cows, you know, maybe I'll write something. And then A Blessing by James Wright. And so I just thought these were incredible things that I had read, and so I started just sitting on a tree stump on my lunch break and writing poetry, and then I started writing on the weekends, and then I became an addict, and then I went back to school and took a poetry workshop and literature classes, and just stayed with it forever. I mean, it's like sometimes you're just fortunate and you just discover something that you love and you want to do that, and you don't lose that love. It's like having a life mate partner. And it changes. Your work changes over time. So, you know, like one book betrays, the new book betrays the old books, you know. There was another question.
Well, just a comment on what you said. The way that you answered the question was to tell about the experience of working with the children with dystrophy. I worked with kids like that too, and I took them swimming, and I was astonished at I was so moved, just emotionally, physically, in every way, having the experience of working with these kids in the water. And it's beautiful that you were bringing that experience of your job to this place where you can open your mind to poetry too.
Well, I just didn't know. You know, I didn't have the kind of education other people had, so I didn't know about creative writing or good literature. And, you know, I was older, so it was easier because I was older, I think.
But the work, though.
Because I had life experience.
I bet the work with those kids opened you.
Well, you know, maybe not so much the work with the kids. I just did that. That was my job. That was, you know, I had a different life than most of the writers I know who've been writing all their lives and went to colleges and universities right away. And it was just, I was a working class woman, and I mean, part of my job was to take kids to the bathroom or, you know, help with physical therapy or help them try to type by blowing in a tube, you know, so that they could communicate. And so, you know, it was not always beautiful and gliding, but that's just what I did for a living. And then I discovered poetry, and, you know, it changed my life. But it was still, you know, it was still a good job. I still loved it. I didn't leave it or anything. I just started writing poetry.
Of the contemporary poets who are your colleagues, who do you find most inspirational? Who do you read?
Contemporary, you mean people that are alive right now? I read everybody. I mean, I read as much as I can. I love Pablo Neruda still. You know, I know he's not alive, but he's my, favorite poet. I like William Pitt Root. I like to read Patty Ann Rogers. I like the way she merges science in with her poetry. I mean, I love so many poets. I don't know how to even answer that because I'm always discovering new writers, I mean, everybody likes Mary Oliver, what can you say about that? And, it's just, I mean, I really don't know how to answer it because I find something beautiful and wonderful in almost all the really good writers that I read. And I'd never heard of the fellow who won the Pulitzer Prize. I don't know a lot of the really younger writers, but, like Sherwin Bitsui is very interesting. I never understand the content of his poems, but listening to him read is beautiful. And when I read them, I don't get them, but the language is great. And so there's things going on with younger writers that people in my age group don't get. And so you understand that, I take it, over there. And Alison Hedgecock is really pretty brilliant. And I just can't think of I can't think of the writers, very many writers I dislike greatly. I didn't like John Ashbery very much, or, I thought just throwing a bunch of words together doesn't do much for me, but, it seemed somehow easy, and I like the labor that goes into it. You had something you wanted to ask? I thought I saw another hand. Well, okay. It's time to just enjoy yourselves and visit for a while, and thank you very much. You're a great audience.